Now, to get a better understanding of the 2024 vice presidential nominee, Republican strategist and former staffer for JD Vance's 2022 Super PAC, Ryan Girdusky is with us this morning. Ryan, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You've known JD for years now. You have strong personal insight to him. What should we know about him as the Republican vice presidential nominee?
I think that JD's a fairly humble guy, and his experience, his life experience, both before being in the Senate, being a combat veteran, being someone who grew up at some points on food stamps, going to Yale and getting in because he's very, very, very smart, and being invited into really the upper crust of society. He was a literary celebrity, which is something that's very, very rare nowadays. And he was an AEI, and he was invited to be into the tech world, and he was a tech entrepreneur. All those things, I think, really give him a very interesting opinion on life and give him an interesting insight to where the country is and where different people are.
How has he evolved as a politician since you first started working with him?
I think that JD's something that's underspoke about JD is the fact how bipartisan he has been while being in the United States Senate. He's worked with Senator Fetterman, Senator Brown, Senator Whitehouse, Senator Kaine, Senator Warren, everything from trying to repeal authority to sit there and invade Iraq again, to the rail reform with Senator Brown that just passed the United States Senate. He's worked really, really hard with different senators when it comes to trying to pass economic reforms that benefit working class people like the ones that he came from.
Vance was once a never Trumper. We've all heard those sound bites. We've read them. Now Trump is setting him up to essentially hand him the keys to the castle. What do you think's changed in the last few months?
I think they didn't know each other. It wasn't just the last few months. JD came around to supporting Trump around 2017, 2018, right after he won in 2016. And I think that his experience with a lot of people within both the media and never Trumpers that he had met who were in the business world, who really spoke down about working class people, really reflected, which side he should be on in the political world. And in 2017, 2018, he started coming towards Trump. So when they met in 2022, right before he ran for the Senate, he really warmed up to each other.
Ryan, I am curious, does the Vance VP selection signify that the Republican Party is possibly forever changed? Does it solidify the MAGA Trumpism movement as the face of the party moving forward, going into November and after?
I would like to think so, but the thing is that a lot of senators are a lot more like Mitch McConnell than they are like Donald Trump or JD Vance. They are really kind of still outsiders within their own party. If you put a bill up about things like trying to get out of Iraq or rescind authority to invade Iraq, a majority of Republican senators would probably vote against it. Same thing with immigration, most things, or trade. I mean, on tariffs, Republicans still are very hesitant. So I think the RNC was a good step forward, but I think if you look at the overall composition of Republican senators, JD is important because JD is an outsider still within his own party, even though he was elected to the United States Senate. Donald Trump is still an outsider when it comes to the opinions of the overall average congressman or senator. And that matters. I think that they are reflective of the Republican Party. They're reflective of working class voters, and they're reflective of the American people.
I have less than a minute. I do have to ask you about JD Vance versus Kamala Harris. They're both bringing a youth aspect to their respective tickets. How do they stack up against each other here, Ryan?
Oh, I think JD will do just fine against Kamala Harris. I mean, he's the first post-Vietnam War veteran running for vice president. He's the first combat veteran running for president, Yale graduate. I think he'll do just fine with Kamala Harris. He has different experiences.
Harris is a former prosecutor. So do you think that'll help her on the debate stage?
Listen, JD should take Kamala seriously. She's not, a joke, but I think JD will do just fine. I think that he's as he said, argued with an Indian woman for the last 15 years of his life every day. So he's very used to it.
Well, we hope you come back on the show, Ryan. I enjoyed our discussion today. Ryan Girdusky, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.